Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I am Adrian Ford, and we are here for a September recap. What did we get done here on the channel in September? What was the reading schedule? How did it go? Etc. I have broken down the month into the sections as opposed to going through it chronologically. So, the weekly reader is the first thing that we really have to tackle here, and I am cautiously optimistic with the direction that this series is going. I got into the creepy, horror, scary story stuff a little bit earlier than I had wanted to. It is difficult sometimes to come up with topics for the weekly reader. And then, so what I try to do is I try to always have an idea or a question. Then I try to have sources and then offer my own opinion. And I've gotten away a little bit from reading a poem and reading an excerpt and replying to comments in each of these videos, but I want to get back to that. It's just that, man, this month, so this video going up will be on the final day of September. So that marks 6 consecutive months of daily uploads that I have on this channel, as well as a few uploads on my personal channel, a link to which can always be found in the description below. And I just crossed last month the 1,000 subscriber mark on my personal channel. So that was something that I should have taken some time to really create on that channel, but I did not. I've been going nonstop here. I've got a full-time job and I've got a part-time job. And then I've been getting 200 miles walking and running each month. So I have been a little bit distracted for a while now. But things should start to even out a little bit in October, and hopefully relatively well, because October is going to be a very difficult month for me with the channel as far as creation is concerned. I have almost zero buffer space in what will end up being a fairly intensive month as far as the reading to editing sort of trajectory goes. There's a new series I'm doing in October, the Darkest series, which I think promises to be pretty work intensive on my behalf. I've got to make a script for them. I've got to do some editing stuff for them. But I think that they will be ultimately fruitful here on the channel. But the topics that we covered on the Weekly Reader this month were, do I have to read the classics? And the answer is, yeah, you do. But, what does the classics mean? Number 2 was, where did the poetry go? In which I say, look, poetry was killed by the radio, short stories were killed by television, and novels were killed by the movies. So where did the poetry go? Why don't we really have any of that anymore? It can't simply be because of music, can it? The third weekly reader that we did was top 5 horror novels. Frankenstein was on the list. It and The Shining were on the list, but the other two might have surprised you. So that is what that is for that weekly reader. And then in the final weekly reader of the month, I attempted to answer the question, why? Why do we love scary stories? I think I got to a relatively well thought out answer, if I do say so myself, but that is what we did with the weekly reader this past month. And then Dubliners. We are continuing the read along of Dubliners here on the channel. This is something that will not necessarily, this will be disrupted in October. I will not be reading the Dubliners through this month. We will get back to it in November. But we went through A Little Cloud, Counterparts, Clay, and A Painful Case. The only 2 of these short stories that I have read before were Counterparts and A Painful Case. I think that they are the 2 better stories here. I think Counterparts is a better story than A Painful Case. I would say I probably enjoyed Clay better than A Little Cloud. So if I were to rank them, it would go A Little Cloud the worst, Clay the next, A Painful Case nearly the best, and Counterparts the best. The read-along of Dubliners has been pretty fruitful for me. I have not got all that much experience with James Joyce, And the most experience I have with James Joyce is reading Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man 3 times, I believe, and that is a very difficult text. His short stories not quite as difficult, much more accessible, but some of them are still pretty cloaked in. I think they're cloaked in the difference of times and cultures between 2024 United States Midwest and 1919 Ireland. And all I really mean by that is little cultural things that maybe don't make sense to me and maybe mean more to the story than anything that I am able to sort of recognize. We continued the Hemingway read along. We got through The Capital of the World early in the month, The Snows of Kilimanjaro, The Old Man at the Bridge, or Old Man at the Bridge, I guess, and Up in Michigan. Up in Michigan was a very difficult type of piece to work with. I think that it's one of those short stories that has very obvious implications, but when you look a little bit deeper than those obvious implications allow, then there's really some interesting stuff going on under the surface. And I think we got around to a little bit of that in that short story discussion for Up in Michigan. Old Man at the Bridge was the second time that short story has appeared on this channel in the past 6 months. I dived into it immediately after National Poetry Month in 2023. And again, as with most Hemingway, I read it 6 months ago. This time when I read it, it was a completely different short story. So much of Hemingway depends on where you are when you take in the text, because so much of that story is left out. Hemingway is giving you a little bit on the top of things. It's the iceberg principle. You see the tip of the iceberg, but most of that ice is under the water. It is an interesting way to write. It is a very, I think, productive way to read. And I think that Hemingway, part of the reason Hemingway has lived so long is giving readers the ultimate in offering readers the ultimate in personalized experiences with stories, because so much of you has to be inflected into the piece. The Snows of Kilimanjaro, I think, is Hemingway's most overrated short story, though there is a grip of dialogue that is incredibly impressive in that short story, and I hope to bring a writing video to the channel sometime soon about that short story. We'll see. I need to get better at editing. I need to learn some tips and tricks. I need to learn some tools of the trade as far as that is concerned. Maybe that is the YouTube stuff that I am missing on this channel. The Capital of the World, the second time this short story has appeared on this channel. I think The Capital of the World is a very understated short story, which might seem like an oxymoron, or might seem oxymoron's not the right word. To say that a Hemingway short story is understated might be playing directly into the Department of Redundancy department. So, The Capital of the World is a short story with very high stakes that happen very quickly, but I don't think anyone really sees them coming. And probably, with the way the short story is set up, probably you should. So that is what we did with Hemingway during the month. Then we move on to the Plath read along. We had 4 more Sylvia Plath poems happen on the channel this month, starting with Vanity Fair, then Strumpet Song, then Tinker Jack and the Tidy Wives, which I thought was a very interesting poem. I thought that poem was something that it has the most interesting conceit that I have seen thus far in Plath. And there's a lot of conceits in Plath that kind of get swept under the rug, just in the way that they're stated. But Tinker Jack and the Tidy Wives puts that conceit right out there, that in the same way that a tinker can come around and fix your pots and pans, that tinker can come around and fix up the women, right? Make them shiny again, etc. Then we have Fawn, which was a Fawn was a poem that to me felt almost like Um, oh golly, what's his name? The supermarket in California, supermarket. There's an American poet that is Charles Ginsberg. Fawn felt to me almost like a Charles Ginsberg poem that was wild and colorful if you're able to put that reading onto the poem. Then we had Holly. Holly thus far has been a bit disappointing to me, but not disappointing to the degree that Fairy Tale was last year. So I think that the Holly the Holly playlist, the Holly reading, the Holly videos on the channel will not take me. The Holly experiment on the channel will not take me quite as long as Fairy Tale last year, because I will be able to actually get through this book in timely fashion and not be distracted by other things, which is what got me with Fairy Tale last year. Then we move on to Bukowski. These were the last sort of productive videos that we had on the channel, and by productive I mean not an October TBR, not uh, an August wrap up, any of that stuff, not a September wrap up, but actual literature here on the channel. And the poems were Gamblers All, Close to Greatness, Confession, The Aliens, Raw with Love, which I accidentally uploaded twice somehow. And that's weird because YouTube normally recognizes the video and will not allow it to upload twice. The German Hotel, the poetry reading, and Layover. Now, I found a cache of videos that is going to be playing on the channel for the next 3 months. They will be on Saturdays in the month of October. They are all Bukowski poems. November and December, the weekends will basically belong to Bukowski, and then I have 2 opening paragraph poems that will play. I believe I'm going to schedule them in November. But these were, look, I don't think anyone reads Bukowski poems for the titles. Sometimes they're interesting, but Bukowski is about the experience of the characters within, which makes him something of a unique poet. I would venture to wager in that he has consistent characters through his poems, sort of like Hemingway has the Nick Adams stories throughout his short stories, but they're not all about Nick Adams. Bukowski has Chinaski, and I think that the best way to understand and grasp Bukowski is with the larger canon of his work in mind. And so the individual poems, the individual videos like this are sort of maybe not the most fruitful, but I'm going to continue to rack up poetry discussions from Bukowski, put them into the playlist, so that maybe a greater idea of what Bukowski's poetry means is coming to the channel. That is all I have for this video. A wrap up for the month of September. We have a very, very busy and packed, chock full October, if you will. And there is a video on the channel announcing that playlist. So if you are interested in that sort of thing, be sure to go and check that out. There's going to be, if I can pull the month off in the way that I want, it should be fairly entertaining if you are a Poe fan, if you are a fan of the horror genre, if you just like literature in general. Again, we're going to continue the Holly series through October. We're going to have the darkest, Emily Dickinson's darkest poem, Edgar Allan Poe's darkest poem, the darkest detail in The Shining, and the darkest detail in As I Lay Dying. Those are the 4 videos that I have planned for that playlist. And again, they're going to be a little bit more intensive, a little bit more creative, I think, a little bit more editing involved in those. And obviously, I don't script most of my videos. I think that for poetry discussions and things like that, scripting is, I think that it's maybe not the most fruitful way to do it. I think discovering the text through notes is more productive than scripting a video, because I think that's a different genre. And I hope to get into that genre, the sort of video essay genre a little bit more heavily on the channel in the future as well. But that is what I have for the September wrap up. I hope to have you back in October. If you hit the like button, it really does help me out on the channel, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, consider hitting the subscribe button in order to stick around for more literature. And hey, I hope to have you back for the next one.